Everything in your life changes the moment you stop giving the outside world permission to control your inner world. Imagine living in a state where no insult, no failure, no rejection, no loss could shake your peace. Not because you're numb, but because you're untouchable. Sounds impossible. It's not. Some people walk through chaos as if they're surrounded by stillness. Life throws fire at them, and they don't flinch. Not because the fire is any less hot, but because they've learned not to burn. The difference between them and everyone else isn't strength, it's understanding. They've discovered something most people never will, that emotional freedom doesn't come from changing the world. It comes from changing your relationship with yourself. Carl Jung understood this long before modern psychology caught up. He saw the chaos of the external world as nothing more than a reflection of internal disorder. And once you get this, once you truly see it, the game of life changes forever. Because now, instead of spending all your energy trying to control what's outside, you master what's within. And when you do that, the world loses its power over you. Most people think they're reacting to reality, but they're not. They're reacting to their thoughts about reality. Two people get rejected from a job. One spirals into self-doubt and shame. The other shrugs and applies somewhere else. Why? It's the same event. But it's not the event that caused the suffering. It's the interpretation. That voice in your head that says, "You're not good enough." That's not the world speaking. That's your mind. And if you don't see that voice for what it is, you'll live your whole life being controlled by it. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Think about that. Every emotional reaction you've ever had, the anger, the jealousy, the anxiety, didn't come from the situation. It came from the meanings you've been conditioned to assign. The world didn't hurt you. Your interpretation did. That's the trap. But it's also the key. Because if your suffering is self-created, that means your freedom is too. When you stop reacting automatically, you start choosing consciously. And that's where true power begins. But why does the world seem to affect us so deeply? Why do certain people, certain comments, certain situations seem to get under our skin, even when we tell ourselves they shouldn't? It's because the world is a mirror. It reflects everything we haven't resolved within ourselves. If someone calls you worthless and you instantly feel anger or pain, it's not because of the insult. It's because some part of you fears it might be true. If you were completely secure in your worth, their words would fall flat, just noise. But the fact that it stung tells you something. It tells you there's an open wound, a belief, likely buried deep, that you're still holding on to. That's why Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." You're not reacting to them. You're reacting to what they awaken in you. This is what people miss. They think the world is causing their pain, but the world is just showing them where their pain lives. You're not being attacked, you're being exposed. And that's an opportunity if you're willing to look. Because every emotional trigger is a message, a signpost pointing toward the part of you that's ready to be healed. This is where most people stop. They feel the sting and they either fight or flee. They argue, blame, shut down, or avoid. But the few who go deeper, who ask, "Why did that hurt me?" they're the ones who break free. Because in that question is the beginning of awakening. If the world is a mirror, then every irritation, every frustration, every emotional spike is a reflection. Not of the world, but of you. And once you understand that, you no longer have to fear being triggered. You welcome it. Because now, each trigger is a doorway. A map to the parts of yourself still living in shadow. And once those parts are seen, accepted, integrated, the trigger disappears. What used to control you no longer holds power. You become immune, not because the world changed, but because you did. The insults still come, the setbacks still happen, but they don't land the same way, because there's nothing left inside for them to stick to. That's what Jung was pointing to. That's the essence of emotional mastery. Not in becoming invulnerable, but in becoming aware. Not in changing the mirror, but in healing what it reflects. When you do that, you stop being a prisoner of your reactions. You stop being a puppet of your subconscious. You stop living in defense of your wounds. And you start living in alignment with your truth. That's when you become untouchable. There's a part of you that you rarely see, not because it's hidden from the world, but because it's hidden from yourself. Carl Jung called it the shadow. It holds all the emotions, fears, thoughts and desires that you've pushed away, suppressed, or denied. It's the version of you that you didn't want to be, the anger you weren't allowed to show, the fear you pretended didn't exist, the insecurities you buried so deeply that you forgot they were even there. But just because you've ignored the shadow doesn't mean it disappears. It shows up in your reactions, in your triggers, in the way you take offense to a comment, overthink a glance, explode over something small. You think you're reacting to the world, but you're actually reacting to your own unconscious pain. That's the shadow trying to get your attention. Most people avoid this part of themselves at all costs. They distract themselves with work, with noise, with scrolling, with surface-level validation. But the shadow doesn't go away. It waits. And it reveals itself every time life doesn't go your way. Every time someone disrespects you. Every time you feel anxious for no reason. It's not random. It's not meaningless. It's a message, a sign that something within you needs to be acknowledged, not avoided. And here's where things start to shift. If you stop seeing your triggers as threats and start seeing them as teachers, you begin to reclaim your power. Because every time you're triggered, you have a choice. You can react blindly and stay in the loop, or you can pause, observe and ask, what part of me is being touched right now? What belief is being threatened? What am I being shown about myself that I haven't accepted yet? That shift in awareness is everything. Once you stop fighting your shadow and start integrating it, your energy changes. You no longer need people to behave a certain way to feel okay. You no longer need constant reassurance to feel worthy. You stop being pulled around by emotional waves because you understand where they come from. And more importantly, you know they're not permanent. They're not facts. They're just signals, temporary flashes revealing what needs to be healed. And when you meet those parts of yourself with presence instead of avoidance, the grip loosens. The reactions fade. The chaos quiets. That's when you start to feel something new. Not numbness, not indifference, but a calm, steady confidence. A deeper kind of peace that isn't dependent on the outside world behaving a certain way. That peace only becomes possible when you stop trying to control everything around you. That's where people stay stuck, in the illusion of control. Trying to manipulate situations, predict outcomes, manage how others see them, micromanage every detail of life just to feel safe. But the truth is, the more you try to control, the more anxious and exhausted you become. Because life isn't built to be controlled, it's built to be experienced. Control is rooted in fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of discomfort, the fear of being hurt again. But ironically, it's the clinging to control that causes the very suffering we're trying to avoid. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He recognized that suffering comes not from what happens, but from the resistance to what happens, from the expectation that life should unfold in a certain way, from the belief that people should treat us the way we want to be treated, from the idea that if we just try hard enough, we can prevent pain altogether. But you can't. Pain is part of the process. Discomfort is part of growth. And control is an illusion. You can't stop people from judging you. You can't stop the unexpected from happening. You can't stop the world from shifting beneath your feet, but you can stop needing it to be any other way. And when you let go of that need, something incredible happens. You find freedom. Real freedom. The kind that doesn't come from having everything go right, but from not needing it to. When you no longer need people to like you, you show up as your real self. When you no longer need certainty, You lean into possibility. When you no longer need life to be fair, you stop playing the victim and start owning your power. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means finally allowing reality to be what it is without trying to bend it to your preferences. It's not passive, it's powerful, because it shifts your energy from force to flow, from resistance to response, from fear to trust. But there's a misconception about this kind of detachment. People hear the word and think it means not caring, becoming numb, emotionless, cold. But that's not what it is at all. True detachment isn't about cutting yourself off from emotion. It's about not being controlled by it. It means you still feel, but you no longer drown. You still experience loss, frustration, anger. But you meet those emotions with awareness, not resistance. You don't deny them. You don't suppress them. You witness them. And in that witnessing, they lose their power to drag you under. Imagine being in the middle of a storm, but standing still at the center of it. That's what detachment feels like. The wind howls, the lightning cracks, but you are not the storm. You are the sky, watching, expansive, unshaken. That's the place Jung was pointing to. That's what it means to be whole, to no longer be fragmented into pieces, some of which you hide from the world and some you hide from yourself. To integrate all of it, to become the kind of person who no longer needs to react to everything, because you've already met every part of yourself inside. When that happens, external chaos stops being a threat. You stop being pulled into drama, into conflict, into emotional turbulence. You become grounded, present, free. And here's the unexpected beauty of this transformation. The world starts responding to you differently, not because it's changed, but because your energy has. You're no longer seeking approval, so people are drawn to your confidence. You're no longer chasing outcomes, so opportunities find you. You're no longer avoiding pain, so it no longer controls you. You stop being someone the world can shake. You become someone the world can't touch, not because life is easier, but because you're finally aligned with something deeper, something the world can't take from you. There's a moment, a very small one, that exists between something happening and how you choose to respond to it. Most people never even notice that moment. Their reactions are so automatic, so deeply wired, that life feels like it's happening to them, not through them. But in that tiny space, between trigger and reaction, lives the most powerful force you'll ever know. Awareness. The ability to pause, to observe, to choose. That's where real mastery begins. You don't need to control the world, you only need to become conscious within it. And yet, very few people ever get there. They stay stuck in cycles, reacting the same way to the same kinds of people, the same types of problems over and over. They don't realize they've been programmed, not by some external machine, but by repetition, by unexamined thoughts, by unresolved emotion. The way you respond when someone disrespects you, the way you shut down when you feel criticized, the way you lash out when you're misunderstood, those aren't conscious choices. They're habits. They're echoes of the past, playing out again in the present. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He knew the unconscious runs most of our lives, and until we bring it into the light, it will dictate every decision, every emotion, every reaction. You might think you're in control, but if you've never examined why you feel what you feel, why you act the way you act, then control is just an illusion. True power begins the moment you catch yourself in the act. When you feel the anger rising and instead of lashing out, you ask why it's there. When you sense jealousy creeping in, and instead of suppressing it or letting it poison your relationships, you stop and explore what belief it's tied to. Every emotional reaction is a doorway. Behind it is a part of you waiting to be seen. And once it's seen, once you become aware of it, you can change it. Not by force, not by suppression, but by understanding. This is the heart of transformation. Learning to observe your inner world in real time. To become so aware of your thoughts and emotions that they no longer control you. To notice the tension in your chest before it becomes an outburst. To recognize the fear underneath your need for control. to feel the sting of rejection without letting it define you. That's not detachment, that's presence. You're no longer living on autopilot. You're choosing, and choice is everything. Because when you choose, you break the cycle. When you choose, you create space between who you've been and who you're becoming. That space is where growth lives. That space is where peace begins. But here's the challenge. Your brain doesn't like change. It's wired for familiarity, even if that familiarity is pain. The neural pathways in your brain are like trails in a forest. The more you walk them, the more automatic they become. That's why the same things keep setting you off. That's why you keep repeating the same emotional loops, even when you know better. But the good news? Those pathways can be changed. The brain is plastic. It adapts. You can rewire it. You can teach it new patterns. You can create new responses. But like any habit, it takes repetition. You have to practice awareness. You have to pause again and again, choosing observation over reaction. And with each pause, each conscious breath, the old pathway weakens and a new one begins to form. Eventually, something strange happens. The things that used to trigger you don't. The comments that once got under your skin now feel like background noise. The situations that used to spiral into anxiety barely register. It's not because you've become cold or detached. It's because you've stopped identifying with the reaction. You've learned to sit in that space between stimulus and response. And in doing so, you've changed the entire trajectory of your emotional life. You've become someone who doesn't just have emotions. You've become someone who understands them. And that understanding sets you free. This is the shift that moves you from being a prisoner of your subconscious to the master of your mind. No longer ruled by invisible scripts, no longer sabotaged by outdated beliefs, no longer dragged by habits that don't serve you. You're not perfect. You still feel, you still struggle. But the difference is now you're aware, you're awake. And from that place, everything becomes possible. Because when your reactions no longer control you, you begin to control your reality. Not by manipulating the outside world, but by mastering your internal one. And this is where things really begin to change. Not just emotionally, but neurologically. Science confirms what Jung intuited. Every time you respond differently, every time you break a pattern, your brain lays down new wiring. The old paths, the ones that led to anger, fear, insecurity, they start to fade. And the new ones, the ones tied to calm, clarity and confidence, they grow stronger. You're not just becoming mentally stronger. You're becoming neurologically different. Your default state shifts. You become harder to provoke, more grounded, less shaken. That transformation isn't theoretical, it's physical. Your brain is literally becoming untouchable. So imagine what happens when this becomes your baseline. When the space between stimulus and response isn't just a rare moment, it's your norm. When you live from that awareness, not occasionally, but every day, you move through the world differently. You're no longer easily swayed, no longer easily wounded. The chaos of life doesn't stop, but you stop getting swept away by it. You stop being a leaf in the wind and become the tree with roots. You become the person who stays calm when others panic, who listens when others shout, who sees clearly when others are clouded by emotion. That's real strength. That's what it means to be free. Not free from emotion, but free from being controlled by it. Not free from challenge, but free from collapse. That freedom begins the moment you become aware, and every moment after that is an opportunity to practice, to pause, to choose, to build the new path. Until one day, you look back and realize the person you used to be, the one who reacted, overthought, spiraled, doubted, isn't running the show anymore. You are. Imagine standing in the middle of a thunderstorm, wind tearing through the trees, rain pouring in sheets, lightning flashing across the sky. Everything around you is chaotic, loud, overwhelming. But then you look up and realize something. Above all of it, high above the clouds, the sky is still. The storm is temporary. The sky remains untouched. That's you. You are not the chaos. You are not the emotion. You are not the turbulence. You are the sky. But most people forget this. They identify with the storm. They believe they are their anger, their fear, their sadness. So they fight it, run from it, drown in it. But emotions are just weather systems. They pass, and they only control you when you forget who you are beneath them. This is what Carl Jung understood so deeply, that the true self isn't the noise. It's the awareness behind the noise. The storm might be intense, but it isn't permanent. What is permanent is your capacity to observe, to remain rooted, to witness without losing yourself. This isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about disidentifying from them. You don't need to kill the storm. You only need to remember that you are more than it. And once you remember that, once you become the sky instead of the storm, everything changes. Suddenly, people's opinions lose their grip. Situations that used to shake you feel lighter. You realize that the world can spin around you, but it doesn't have to spin within you. And here's the shift that most people never make. They try to control the storm. They try to make the world stop being chaotic. They try to make people kinder, life more predictable, the future more certain. But that's the wrong target. The storm was never the problem. The problem was identifying with it. When you're no longer at the mercy of every emotion, you don't need the storm to end. You simply stop being dragged by it. And when that happens, something incredible begins. The world starts to reflect your internal stillness. The chaos outside begins to mirror the calm within. It's not magic, it's resonance. People sense when someone is grounded. They feel when you're not easily provoked, not desperate for validation, not reactive, and they respond to that. Suddenly you're not constantly defending yourself, explaining yourself, proving yourself. You're just being, and that being is enough. This is the essence of inner freedom. It doesn't mean you won't feel things. It means you won't become what you feel. The anger comes, but it doesn't control your words. The fear rises, but it doesn't dictate your choices. The doubt whispers, but it doesn't drown out your truth. Because you've built a space inside yourself, a quiet, steady center, where you can hold those emotions without becoming them. That space is everything. It's what turns reaction into reflection. It's what turns chaos into clarity. And once you've built it, no one can take it from you. But how do you get there? How do you go from reacting to everything to becoming someone the world can't shake? It starts by recognizing where you've been giving your power away. Every time you need someone's approval to feel worthy, you hand them the remote control to your self-esteem. Every time you need a situation to go a certain way to feel at peace, you give away your stability. Every time you make your inner world dependent on the outer one, you become fragile, reactive, anxious, uncertain. But when you reverse that, when your internal state no longer depends on external validation, you reclaim your energy. You take your power back. And that's when you become truly untouchable. This kind of untouchable presence isn't loud. It doesn't need to shout or prove itself. It's subtle, quiet, rooted. It's the confidence that comes from knowing you're whole already. The peace that comes from no longer chasing, forcing, or pretending. When someone insults you, you don't crumble. Not because you're ignoring it, but because it doesn't stick. There's nothing inside you that believes it. When life doesn't go your way, you don't spiral. Not because you don't care, but because your center isn't built on circumstances. Your peace is internal. Your worth is self-sourced. That's real strength, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that endures. And something unexpected happens when you live from that space. You begin to influence the world around you, not through control, but through presence. People feel your energy, even if they can't explain it. They find themselves calmer around you, more honest, less defensive. Why? Because you've stopped playing the game. You're not fighting for approval, attention, or control. You're just existing in your truth. And that truth creates space for others to do the same. You become an anchor in a world that's always trying to drift. This is the paradox of power. When you stop chasing it, you start radiating it. When you stop trying to be seen, people start noticing. When you stop trying to control outcomes, the best outcomes start flowing toward you, not because you forced them, but because you stopped resisting. Life opens up when you stop needing it to go your way. It becomes lighter, freer, more aligned. And through that alignment, you move differently. You speak with clarity, you act with intention, you respond instead of reacting, and most importantly, you stay grounded, no matter what life throws your way. That's the final transformation. Not a life free of difficulty, but a life where difficulty no longer defines you. Not a world without storms, but a mind that knows how to stay calm inside them. You don't need perfect conditions to be at peace. You only need to stop outsourcing your peace to conditions. Jung said that wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of the self, but by integration. The light, the shadow, the chaos, the stillness. When you accept all of it, when you stop fighting who you are and start owning it, that's when nothing and nobody can affect you again. Because now, you're no longer living from reaction, you're living from realization. And that changes everything.